As we said, I lead digital workplace technology for the group. We'll talk a little bit about what that is, and we'll talk a little bit about Nationwide, and then really kind of dig into this idea of lean management, agile delivery, and then maybe something new for some of you, this idea of positive energy and how that helps us in deploying lean and agile in our organization. So really quickly, I don't want to go into, this isn't a talk on Nationwide per se, but just to give you context for us, a lot of people know us from our things like auto and home insurance. We are a much more diversified company than that. Auto and home is important to us, but it's just one of the divisions. We do a lot in the financial services sector, everything from public sector retirement plans to pet insurance, all kinds of life insurance, and then we are the largest agricultural insurer. This is important when we think about how we deploy and how we run technology in an organization of this size. We're certainly not the largest financial services company in the United States, but I would say by a pretty wide margin, we are the most diversified as far as the number of products that we write for our policyholders. Big company, Fortune 100, about $300 billion in assets. We'll do about $55 billion in sales in 2022. Okay, so we're a little bit different than I think a lot of our competitors in that, and this is important to when we talk about why positive energy is so important to us. We are really leaning into this idea of permanent change to how we work in a post-pandemic world. Pre-pandemic, we were a very much in-office culture across our strategic employment centers across the United States. As you can see from this, we're showing that we're about 50% permanent work from home now, 40% hybrid, and that 40% hybrid is much more on the avenue of once every couple weeks or maybe once a month than it is 2 or 3 days a week in the office. And then 10% of us are permanent in office. I am presenting from our headquarters today. I have a number of, because of my role for the company and some of the infrastructure things that we do that have to be on premise, I do have a number of employees that are in our buildings every single day, and I like to be here with them often. So, but we are really primarily a work from home company at this point in time. Why I say we've leaned into it, we've actually sold about half of our real estate portfolio, and which is great. We'll talk about hybrid work, but we'll also talk about some of the challenges, especially when it comes to lean and agile and what it means for our go forward model. Digital workplace tech. Our whole mission in this company is to create extraordinary experiences for our associates. We have all of the, let's call it consumer technology, all of the technology that allows our associates to do their job, as well as workplace experience design. So our EX designers and our researchers and our voice of associate researchers all are within digital workplace. But other than that, we divide up into personal computing, which includes both the PC fleet, the Mac fleet. We run a fleet of about 40,000 devices. Then in addition, the mobile platforms, endpoint security, collaboration, so things like Zoom, Teams, the M365 suite, voice technology, all of our associates' telephony needs, both mobile and in office, as well as contact center infrastructure. Then we've got our collaboration spaces, event tech, we run meetings, we support our board of directors, and we also run the help desk as well as some other concierge services for both our associates and then external agents and wholesalers as well. So big group. And here's the crazy thing about this. I got this role. I would describe this job as the things that you don't want during a global pandemic. I mean, I got the role 3 weeks before we started sending people home, and it was a great learning experience. And it was a good time to join as we got to reinvent what digital workplace means to the organization in a pandemic world. Now, what that meant was that we had to get really clear on, okay, if we're really going to do this and not with this kind of plan to say, well, we're eventually just going to call everybody back into the office, which I think a lot of companies have that even if they're not saying it publicly, I think they have that design that they are going to start to bring people back. But if we're going to really lean into this idea of a digital workplace, we have to be able to deliver in an excellent way. For us, what I would call our superior delivery model is this idea of lean management, agile delivery, and a positive, thriving culture. And what I'm going to try and illustrate today is why that's so important in our new kind of work environment that many of us are in. On the left-hand side there, of course, we're a lean organization. I'm a big fan of the X Matrix. I like it as a strategy on a page, as a component of Hoshin. If anybody has questions about Hoshin, I know we don't have time to talk about strategic deployment from a lean perspective today, but would be happy to chat anytime anyone would like. It's one of my favorite topics. But we look at this and say, what is it that we want to be? Just in a real quick tour that down there along the bottom, that's our 3 to 5 year aspirational statements. It's kind of what I would call what we want to be when we grow up. And then tying that into tactics and KPIs, and then we deliver it through this idea of a superior delivery model. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is how that bottom positive, thriving culture really enables lean management and agile delivery for us in a sustainable way. Okay. So just as a little bit of context for Nationwide and how we execute what we think of as our lean management system, we run in 4 tiers. Now, Sanjeev's probably seen this more times than he can count, and certainly we are appreciative of everything that Lightspeed in particular has done. They've been a big part of Nationwide's agile and lean transformation over the years. But we run a system down there on the right that when I think of lean management, I think of 3 composite pieces. Leader standard work. What are the value-adding activities of leaders in the organization? What are visual controls? How do we make the work of management visible within the organization? Just like it's important to make the work of frontline or the hidden work of knowledge workers visible in our environments, we believe the same thing is true for the management system. And then accountability. How are we improving the system, and how are we doing what it is that we say we're going to do? And of course, in a lean system, a big part of that is the pillar of respect for people. And how are we developing our people? How are we replicating ourselves? How are we giving them meaningful work and meaningful things to do every day, as well as a say in the system? All of this is really around the principle of healthy lean management equals healthy lean production. I mean, we can call this whatever we want. We can talk about agile, we can talk about management 2.0, we can talk about servant leadership, lean management, and we're all trying to get to the same thing, which is let's align to true north for the company, and let's create systems that help us to get there while benefiting all stakeholders of that system, whether it's our customers, our shareholders, our employees, the communities at large. And that's what we're trying to do in this system. And I would say that one of the things that I'm looking for whenever I go on Gemble walks to other companies and they say that they're a lean organization is I look at the management system. What is management focused on every day? How does management react when there is a problem? How do we create problem solving in our organizations? How are you going out and understanding the work that your teams do? Those things really, to me, point to this idea of healthy lean management. And I would propose, my first hypothesis for the day is that if you don't have healthy lean management, you can't have healthy lean production. And again, use the words that you want. We could say you can't have a great agile software development without healthy lean management. Okay, so I want to show a couple examples just in context of how we operate. This, for instance, is it's a screenshot of my digital visual board. One of the problems that we had to overcome when we moved everybody into a home environment was, hey, we all believed, and I don't think we were just kidding ourselves or lying to ourselves, that there was this idea of information radiating across the management system that people could see, that you had to be able to, I think of 5 feet 3 seconds, understand how the organization is operating in a very quick fashion. But now we've all moved home and things have moved into disparate-based systems in order to track that management system. And we said that's not good enough. We have to create what the digital equivalent is of the team space or the war room or the management board or the Obeya boards within our system. And this, we happen to use FigJam as our tool of choice for how to create these digital canvases. But you can see this looks like, I know Sanjeev and Bob have seen my boards in the past. This looks like exactly what it would look like if we were in a physical environment. We have problem solving sections. We have accountability boards. We have the delivery board with very clear, for our blue chip projects, very clear indicators of how things are going. Along the bottom here, we post each one of my directs leader standard work for the organization. These are all associate vice presidents in the company. We have our A3s that are in flight. Now, this is a PowerPoint presentation, so I can't zoom in for you guys. But the great thing about doing this is saying, okay, well, just like if I was in a room, I couldn't see everything all at once. I wouldn't be dependent upon a computer to create order for me. These types of systems for us force our brains to work just like they would in a physical environment. I can't see everything all at once. I have to make those connections. I can have to look at cards and see how that translates to problems. And this happens in every level of my organization. This is one of my AVPs that runs the workplace collaboration team. This happens to be his board and how he's running it with his directors and managers in the organization. And it traverses all the way down to the front line. Even within our agile teams. So within my group, we've got about 30 dev lines, about 30 agile teams across the company. There are hundreds of them. And similarly, we used to be able to do Gemba walks. Gemba is a big part of our culture here, this idea of go and see. And we could always walk into the team space and interact and dive into wherever we wanted to do. And we didn't have that in this new digital world. So again, we used FigJam. These are not these are links within there, but what this allows us to do is sort of a digital Gemba, just like we would in the line. This is the Squids line. We can see what their dashboard is. We can go to their backlog. We can look at the active sprint. We can look at their retrospective board. We can see metrics, and we can just walk through those. And this canvas lets us essentially, with one click, do a deep dive into each one of those things, whether it be Jira or whether it be Microsoft Planner. I believe that one is for the retrospective board. So what we've done, I wanted to give this context to say that we are trying to figure out the best ways to work in this new environment. I think it's a lost cause to just say, well, let's replicate what we had in the office and make it as close to what that was in the digital world. I think the real gold is in saying, okay, let's reimagine how we work in this new way, because as if we had never been in office to begin with. That, in my mind, you have a better chance of creating a system that works for the people that are now here. Now, there are other reasons why we've done this. I think Nationwide, being a primarily work from home company, gives us an incredible recruiting advantage, at least if the popular press is to be believed. Lots of companies are bringing people back. There's lots of people out there looking for remote work, and this gives us an option. And this gives us a kind of a leg up on the competition. Now, at the same time, though, it creates some problems for us. And we're going to talk a little bit about those problems, specifically in relation to this idea of positive energy. But before we do that, I want to do a couple disclaimers here. Number one, I'm not an expert in positive psychology. I'm just sharing what's worked for us. There are lots of real experts out there. Two that I work a lot with are the Center for Positive Organizations at the University of Michigan, which is tough for me to say as an Ohio State alum, but Michigan does have, I think, the most wonderful organization around positivity and this idea of positive organizational scholarship in the United States. And then also Positive Foundry is a consulting firm that we use quite a bit in this space as well. The second one is the most important point here. I want to be clear that we're not talking about toxic positivity. And I think a lot of people mix up this idea of this positive organizations with happiness. And that's not what we're talking about. You're all human beings. We all have a range of emotions. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be indifferent. And it's okay to be happy. And as throughout our lives, we all experience a range of those emotions. And ideally we experience those on a near daily basis. But what I am talking about is creating resilience. That's really where the gold is for us in this idea of positivity. And similar to, let's say, if you were training for a marathon, you can't show up for the day of the race and then start to practice. And what we're going to be talking about today really is in the same vein. This has to be a journey. What we're doing is giving our employees the ability to be resilient in the face of bad circumstances. And that's why we put this program in place, was to say, let's build this before we need it. Let's create something that allows people to have great experiences in the office, great experiences at home, and great experiences as a remote workforce or a hybrid workforce in the future. Okay, so a couple questions we're gonna talk about. I think of this as the golden age of flexible work. So I have a big part in our workplace strategy for the company, and from having been in the workforce for longer than I'd like to say, this is an incredible time to be an employee. We have given people lots of flexibility, lots of companies have, of course. There is more emphasis on work-life balance than I've ever seen before. There's an understanding of where we're going in the future. But even in the face of all of this, what I would consider to be pretty great things, the data is telling us that everyone's unhappy. Now, I'm talking about generally the things that we're seeing from organizations like Gallup or otherwise, that there's a level of disengagement lately that's happened since the pandemic started, and since it ended, it's continued. And one of the questions I'd like to ask is, why is everyone so unhappy? If you believe that this is the golden age of flexible work, it would seem that everybody would be really happy. And I have some opinions on this, but that's all they are, is opinions. And then secondly, is agile lean enough? And specifically now, with our teams not all co-located together, is there something human missing in the teams? Have we as humans been done a disservice in some respects in how we've handled this problem that we all had to overcome? Are we meant to stare at each other through screens for 8 hours a day? Is there a better way? So those are some of the things that I think we should think about as we go through this. Okay, so to put some details to this, what does it mean to us? I will give the CPO a lot of credit for working through with us on these three items. Number one, purpose and meaning. That, in my mind, is the covenant of leadership. Is setting, only leadership can give us the what. What is it that we're doing, and why are we doing it as an organization? And this is easy to say and hard to do. I would bet that many of you know companies that put out a purpose statement or a mission statement, and they do it once a year, and then there's never a discussion of it again. There's never a link down into the work that each of us do every day for our companies. And I would, again, hypothesize that this is one of the reasons why people are unhappy lately. At least when people were coming into the office, there was some sort of shared whatever. Now, as people are largely on their own, work has become more transactional. And leaders have to go to a much greater extent to create that connection between purpose and meaning of the company, purpose and meaning and reason for being, and the jobs that each of our associates or employees are doing. So we'll talk about some behaviors related to that. Number two, connections and belonging, binding people together. So remember, this idea of is us looking at each other through a screen, creating connection and belonging. How are we creating? On this one, I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't already know. How are we creating those opportunities for people to connect to the company or to other employees in a natural way? This is something that is very, very difficult to force. And it's very, very difficult to do in a digital environment. There's there's something to be said for those interactions and those meetings and those connections that we have that are not planned, that happen, that create belonging for employees. And then finally, this one's my own personal one. All of my management team knows this. It's my no jackasses rule. And that's the idea of just pure positive energy. We all know them. I'm going to show you here in a second a slide that talks about De-Energizers and Energizers and what the different characteristics and behaviors are of those types of people. But this is really important to me. If we have somebody that is a De-Energizer in the organization, just like when we talked about in the past, lean and agile, core lean and agile transformations, a few well-placed people that are going to dig their heels in and create negativity can torpedo the whole thing. Same thing in this new environment. That if we have people that aren't team players, that if we have people that are mean-spirited, that are always trying to bring the team down, that's actually worse in a digital environment we've found than it was in a physical environment. In a physical environment, it was easier to identify it, it was easier to handle it, and it was easier to move beyond it. In a digital environment, sometimes those things go unhidden through conversations that other people can't hear. So this is one that we pay a lot of attention to say, hey, let's identify those people that are both positive energizers and those ones that are not. And let's work to get those ones that are not out of the organization as quickly as possible. Certainly, I have a view that we treat our employees with white glove service. So this isn't a once and done type thing, but this is the trend is not your friend type situation where we are looking to say, who are those consistent de-energizers in the organization, and let's get them out of the organization. Let's create a winning team and one that leads with positivity and energy. Again, not happiness, but positivity. And let's create this as a great place to work and in this new world of remote work. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this. Let me check time. Okay, a few minutes left before questions. This idea of energizers versus de-energizers. So this was work that was done by Kim Cameron, wrote a fantastic book last year called Positively Energizing Leadership. This is some pretty good stuff. Now, I've greatly simplified Kim's work, and he really is probably the leading thinker in this space. But I think this kind of helps us a little bit with what are these things that we're looking for and how are we measuring them? Look at a couple of these. For instance, number 5, they are trusting and trustworthy. Now, that's pretty easy to say, and I don't think any of us on this call today would say, well, I want people that are untrustworthy. No, that's easy to say, but here is something that we believe, that these behaviors on the left here are things that can be taught. You can be taught how to be trustworthy in an organization. You can be taught how to be genuine. You can be taught how to listen actively. So again, these are things, if we put this in the framework of lean and how we create behaviors with people, because that's really all that culture is, right? Is the sum total of your daily behaviors within your organization. That is what makes up culture every day inside the company. And we can, if we focus on these things, make them known, reinforce them, what I would call behavior-driven transformation, then we can create the things that we need for a sustainable, positive culture. I can tell you that the data clearly shows us that when we do these things on the left very well, the other things within the Lean Agile framework tend to work better, which at the end of the day, we're a business, means that we're delivering better product to our customers. And it is amazing to see what can happen in the teams that really lean into this versus the ones that are more on the right side. I mean, if you look at some of these de-energizers, indifferent and uncaring, skeptical and lack integrity, inflexible, reject feedback. We all know people like this. The question becomes, does your system call that out and do something about it? Or is it just talk after a meeting or after a huddle or after wherever, but there's no actual corrective mechanism? So we could go in all kind of tangents from here, like what does your coaching system look like? How do you bring people into the teams? How do you unselect people from teams? I mean, this stuff all has to be embedded into the operations of how you work. But the point is, on this slide, is these are the things that matter. Now, there are easy ways to measure this. You can do simple questionnaires that everybody answers about everybody else. That is, you could even do it as one question. After I have a conversation with this person, do I feel energized or do I feel drained? And you can measure that on a large scale basis. Kim did a lot of work with some very name brand companies in this particular area, and the stats are just astounding as far as how much more productive teams are, for instance, when they're led by an energizer versus a de-energizer. This is really, it seems like kind of fuzzy bunny stuff, but it's actually really, really important things to producing value for the company. So how did we start to build this, and how do we take those sorts of behaviors and build them into our system? Number one, we interview for those things within our the process that we use for interviews within Digital Workplace. We're actually looking for positive people. We're looking for those that exhibit behaviors on the left side of that prior slide than on the right side. But then once people are into the organization, we try to build it directly, specifically within the leadership team, within leader standard work. This idea of what are those value-adding activities of management? What are the ceremonies? What are the repeatable activities that we put in place for our leaders in order to instill this type of mindset within people? We also supplement that with training, similar to what we do with Agile and Lean practices. We partnered this year with a company called Positive Foundry that I introduced earlier on a 12-month program for our leaders, where they would learn one skill. These happen to be the skills we use. One skill per month, and then they have a month to demonstrate it. And we put in place all kinds of things like supporting activities and a chance to share and chances to talk about it. It's similar to what we do with our huddle meetings, where sometimes the act of having this accountability session, building these things into that, we're amazing at building those skills directly into the daily behaviors of our leaders. Just like all things, we don't expect that every manager or every director or vice president in our group is able to exhibit these all the time. But if we can get just a few of these in place and bake them into our operations, the impact is pretty powerful for the organization. Similar to before, this idea, for instance, an easy one up there is practice gratitude. I bet everybody has heard the story of gratitude and what that can do for your lives. I would also bet that fewer than, let's say, 25% of the people on this call have a daily gratitude practice where you built that into a behavior where every day you're expressing gratitude for something in your life. Even though we all know that the neuroscience tells us that that does wonderful things for your brain, makes you more resilient, it makes you happier, you have better relationships, you're more forgiving. I mean, all these things that happen from gratitude, but we don't always practice it. So where I think the magic for us and the success for us has been is that we bake that into what we do within the organization. Example for me, for instance, I'm a lot of the Lightspeed people know this. I'm kind of like, I like to get down to business. I oftentimes don't take time to stop and just kind of center. And so lead with mindfulness was probably something that I had a lot of issues with my organization. So now I will have somebody that's on my team lead us, especially on meetings that are going to be difficult topics. Let's get centered. Let's think about it. Maybe we'll do a breathing exercise. Maybe we won't for 30 seconds. But we're actually at least taking the time to center and say, what is it that we're trying to do today? Let's be mindful. Let's be present. Let's be here. And that's now baked into how we start meetings. But there's all kinds of examples of that within the organization. The key is to say, hey, let's take these things that we know that work. But we all know that there's going to be a point in time where we forget about them, just like all training. The stories abound. If you go to a 2-day seminar, everybody's really jazzed up afterwards, and 6 weeks later, nobody remembers anything that they learned, and it certainly isn't practiced as a part of the daily culture. So we're just hedging our bets and saying we're going to build that into our practice, whether that be a direct section on the huddle boards. Every huddle board in my entire organization has a place where we're expressing gratitude to people around what it is that they do for the organization or what we're happy for within those particular teams. Then at an associate level, so that was the leadership team, but we also needed to push this down into the organization. I don't think either one can, production or development can't happen without positive management, and positive management can't happen without the development teams and engineering teams, of course. So we also wanted to create something for our associates. What we came up with was that probably a monthly program was not appropriate for them. I probably have about 400-ish, give or take 5 to 10 people within Digital Workplace, partnered with our cloud operations team on this program. So let's say we were training a total of about 700 people. What we did was came up with 52 weeks of a simple 10-minute video followed by a 5-minute conversation that we went through each week, where we would take a topic like build positive emotions, and we would break it down into really easy bite-sized things that our associates could incorporate. And it was different. The reason why I wanted to do that at a team level and have small discussions rather than kind of like what we did for the management team was because these things are different. There are a vast variety of teams in this organization. I have shift workers that are on a help desk versus an engineering staff working on core infrastructure. And the way that we approached it with each of those teams might be a little bit different. So we wanted something that was custom for each of those organizations. And I can tell you this program, in all of my years of leading organizations, this has been the thing of this idea of building positivity into Lean and Agile, which itself has done wonderful things for Nationwide as a company, has been more impactful than anything that we've ever done. Now, whether it was the right time, meaning pandemic and people were feeling down, whether it was that we had this great Lean Agile culture and this was just an accelerator for it, I don't know. We'll have to see what the data tells us over time, but it's been an incredible experience for us. It's been something that I think has been core to creating a sustainable work from home environment where people still feel connected to the company. Some of the results that we're seeing is an increased engagement. Now that's correlative. We do measure engagement within the company. In general, nationwide engagement has been going up. Digital Workplace and Cloud went up a little bit higher than the company, but I am not at all. I don't have the data to back it up to say that it's causative. We do have lower attrition compared to both industry rates and nationwide technology overall. We have tighter bonds, remote work that's kind of crazy. Some of the things that the teams are coming up with, we unleashed them as a part of this program to say, okay, so you have the foundation. This is for you. What can we drive? What can you do within your organizations to create this kind of shared spirit? And some of the things are pretty creative. Customer sat scores are way up. For us, our primary customers are our employees, but also agents and wholesalers and financial institutions. And customer sat scores are way up, more so than would be expected just from normal continuous improvement activities. And then finally, we certainly have what I would call a more positive workforce, and whether that's happiness, joy, whether it's just resilience, whether it's just a more reflective workforce, the meetings and the tone of things are different, even in the face of what I would call is sometimes the Zoom fatigue or other things that teams get. There's also more of a desire to get together on a regular basis than we've ever had before in the preceding 2.5 years. That people are excited, they know more about each other, they have tighter bonds, and they want to get together on a more frequent basis. Some cases that makes sense. Some cases, for some of our teams, they are truly 100% remote and stay that way. So with that, think, Sanjeev, I managed to stay on time. I'm sorry, guys, if that seemed like I was going fast. I wanted to make sure that I hit my time and did leave some time for